Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We have some exciting breaking news for the Texas A&M Aggies as they land five-star defensive lineman Dominick McKinley out of the Louisiana area. And if you've been kind of paying attention to this recruiting battle or recruiting in general, you've kind of seen Brian Kelly and this LSU Tiger program have done a really good job locking the state up. And I mean, Dominick McKinley, obviously LSU wanted him bad, but so did every place in the country. So for Texas A&M to go out there and win a big battle out of that state that's been really kind of trending towards the LSU program, I think is huge. And it just kind of shows you this Texas A&M team's not really going anywhere in terms of being a recruiting power. Now we've looked like they've brought in some big time classes in the past. I mean, 2022 is the real headliner, but you kind of look, this 2024 class is shaken up to be, it looks like it'll be a top five, especially if they can land some of those guys like Terry Bussey, a couple more of those big premier recruits that they're very much in the mix for. And if history is any guide, I'm sure Texas A&M is going to get their share, because Jimbo Fisher, for whatever he's not done on the field necessarily, he's still added a ton of talent. This Texas A&M teams have really been talented. So before we get too deep into the player, just wanted to thank you guys again, especially the Texas A&M fans have been really supportive. And if you've been watching our content, we're very high on what this Texas A&M team can be, especially on the defense. I mean, you look, that was a super young unit last year, especially up front. And if guys like Shamar Stewart and Walter Nolan take that step and kind of play really consistently at the level they flashed at, this Texas A&M defense is just going to be a handful, because you look, the secondary looks like it's going to be really good. Added a couple really nice transfers, and in the linebacker group's just a very experienced, solid unit. So just getting into a little bit of Dominick McKinley, I mean, you got a guy who at 6'7" about is what 24/7 has him. Obviously, On3 has him at 6'5", and no doubt he's growing, and he'll probably be in that 6'7", 6'8" region. I think you see a guy who plays extremely fundamentally sound at that size, and I'm just kind of talking from a leverage standpoint. I mean, for being that big and playing on the interior, I think you see a lot of guys play kind of high just because they can. And when you're in high school and you're that athletic and that strong as Dominick McKinley obviously is, you don't necessarily need to play fundamentally sound. You can play high. You don't need to play with that elite leverage. He'll have to play with that in college when the offensive linemen kind of catch up. So I think a guy who's got solid fundamentals, and then, I mean, the real highlight of his game is just the way he uses hands. I mean, it seems like he's got a really good swim move that he uses consistently to get in the backfield and be really disruptive. So again, you're looking at a defensive lineman who I think can play at that, not just be a space eater, but be a dynamic playmaker and make those big time plays behind the line of scrimmage that, in my opinion, change games. Like, that's what those modern really good tackles do. I mean, you talk Aaron Donald, the reason he's so good is he's got that vicious swim move that just works consistently, and he's in the backfield all the time. I think that's what Dominick McKinley should be, and that's the type of defensive tackle, frankly, I want. And you just look at what this Texas A&M defense is doing, especially up front on the defensive side of the ball. I think Coach Robinson's doing an excellent job, or at least it looks like carrying on for what Coach Price had built in this Texas A&M program. Because you look, Texas A&M has had a ton of really good defensive linemen come out of that program for a long time. Not only have they been able to recruit that position at a really high level, but they're sending these guys into the NFL draft and getting picked relatively high. Now, they maybe haven't had that top 5 guy yet. I think that might be on their roster now with Walter Nolan, frankly, and probably Shamar Stewart as well. But you look, Dalen Mack, and Bobby Brown, and obviously DeMarvin Leal, they've had their share of really good defensive linemen. And I don't see that stopping. I mean, you look in this 2024 group, they're just incredible. I mean, the young guys obviously look like they're going to play really well. So I think this unit just, again, will continue to be a stalwart. And obviously in 2023, they bring in David Hicks, one of the better linemen in the country. And now they're bringing in Dominick McKinley. So this is a unit that I think is continuing to build. I think will continue to be a strength of this Texas A&M program, And to me, that's where it starts on defense. If you can rush the passer and just be dynamic up front and make a lot of negative plays, you're really hard to move the football on. So again, you just kind of look this unit. I just love where this Texas A&M team is kind of going. And I think a lot of people after that 2022 class came in, obviously big, extremely talented, had a little bit of attrition, obviously, with some transfers and whatnot. But frankly, if you bring in that big of a class, like, of course, you're going to have some. So I think a lot of people wanted to kind of like jump on Texas A&M, like, oh, that was a flash in the pan. They're not going to be able to sustain that. You look, the 2023 class wasn't big, but it had a lot of really talented players. This 2024 class is kind of going to be in that bigger, highly ranked class. I think this will be a top 5 group. So, yeah, just Texas A&M's not going anywhere. I know a lot of people don't like Jimbo Fisher, but I think you can't deny the success he's had, especially on the recruiting trail, and frankly, a lot of times on the field. I mean, Texas A&M, they have high expectations. I don't think they've really been meeting them exactly, but that's not to say they've been bad teams. I mean, they've had some obviously really good years. Jimbo Fisher had really good years at Florida State too. I think this year, though, to me, given what we've kind of been talking about, it is huge, and they've got to kind of pay it off. I think they're too talented this year to not be very much in competition for that SEC West. And frankly, I think if that defense, especially that defensive line, makes some strides that we kind of think they can, I think you're looking at a unit that certainly can be in that conversation for the SEC West. But again, the story will always be until they kind of rewrite that, as this Texas A&M team always has talent. They're always probably going to have talent, at least as long as Jimbo Fisher is there, and in his recent success and continued success in recruiting kind of continues along. But they got to put it on the field, and I think they got a really good opportunity this year with an Alabama team that frankly has a lot of questions, and maybe an LSU team that I think they're going to be really good, but like they're still very early on in the Brian Kelly era. So this, to me, big year for A&M, and I'm really excited for them. That'll be all. Going to keep it short today, but thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll talk to you later.